So everybody, what's up? It's Carpo. My question for the day is, what is freedom? What is freedom? Any takers? A lot of talk about freedom. There always has been. A lot of talk about losing rights. A lot of talk about what's important, what's not. I'm a proponent of the individual freedom of humans to do as we please, so long as no others are harmed. But I think that there's a misconception about what freedom really means, and um, you know, the misconception is that freedom means we do what we want. And sometimes when we do what we want, it affects others negatively, and that's when it's not okay. Freedom is a touchy subject for a lot of people. They think that they should be entitled to do whatever they like, however they like. Sometimes when a law is passed, people get very upset about it. But often the law is passed because many people support it. And often that law is supported out of ignorance, such as, let's say, the illegalization of cannabis, the misconceptions about it. So just because most people wanted it illegal or whatnot, or, well, it wasn't really a people's choice at that point, but let's say the legalization campaigns they've had over the last 20 years in various states where people don't vote it legal, just because they don't understand. So there are times when people make decisions because they don't know any better. But the freedom to vote is one of those issues that is a very hard one to cover, because it means that a person should be aware of what they're voting on. A person should be aware of the issues. And the reason I brought in legalization to the idea of freedom, I've always felt that I have the right to consume what I choose. When I was on probation years back for pot, I would argue with my probation officer about whether or not pot should be illegal. Not recommended for anyone who's on probation to argue with your PO, but especially when you're trying to justify something you got in trouble for. But I couldn't help it because I felt like it was right. And she just got sick of me eventually, and I eventually did get off probation. But I said, whatever I choose to put in my body should be my choice. And I understand you're just doing your job, but it's not harming anyone. And she started saying, well, it is harming people because, the people who sell that cannabis, there's all sorts of violence and whatnot over the weed, and, gang violence and border problems. And I said, but I buy all my pot locally from the local dealers. And she says, well, then they're taking money out of the system. And I said, yeah, and it goes right back into the system. And, she ended up getting frustrated with me because I had points on every angle. Marijuana is not a harmful thing, that it should be free for any adult who chooses to consume it. That's just one angle of many, but that's a freedom that many people don't have, only because people have made bad choices in their laws. So let's talk about freedom of, the right to do what we want, as far as well, I feel like going out and causing trouble and doing this, or I feel like I should be able to go out and do this or do that, when it's affecting more people. I guess I'm trying to put it simply, the way to look at something, to whether or not you should have the freedom to do it, is it harming anyone or offending anyone? Offending people is one thing. It's different. It's a lot of things we do are going to offend people. That's all right. But as long as we're not offending people on things such as, I guess, race, things like that. If we're picking on people, in other words, it should be because they're not being good people. The only time that I think that we should point the finger at people is when they're being assholes. Basically. So those are the ones who deserve it. And but other than that, we should have the freedom to express ourselves as we please. And even racism, if that's what somebody chooses to, that's always been an issue of contention with people. Should a person be permitted to say racist comments? Obviously, in general society, it's okay. It's not okay in the sense, but I mean, it's legal. People won't. They're not going to get a fine if you say the word nigger. Yeah, I said it. It's a word to me that means nothing because it means everything to so many people. But by saying the N-word, you're just covering it all up. I'm as far as you get from a racist. I think that all races are awesome, and I think the world would be a very boring place if we had one race. And I love all the different cultures and whatnot. But so, like, when we buy into the hype, I guess, of society, what they tell us is good and bad, and all the like cliche things to say, I just don't buy it. And I think that people are way too sensitive. It's like knowing who we are is important, but knowing who we are as a culture and knowing our roots, it goes both ways. Some people say it's really important to embrace our roots, and then others are saying, well, we all just need to be one. And I don't believe in a homogenized society because I've observed around me how different groups tend to associate with their kind, if you will. And I'm not talking about races. I'm just saying birds of a feather. People flock together. Unfortunately, because of that, it opens up like this realm of suppression and oppression by the government, by other people. In other words, low-class groups, especially those who can't afford more, they tend to be, they have less freedoms because they're trapped in the system of welfare and this vicious circle of not being able to find work. And I hear a lot of people say, well, get out of the ghetto, and it's just not that easy. You grow up where you grow up and you become adapted to it. A person doesn't just get up and move out of their town without something to look forward to or understanding the rest of the world. A person who's never traveled can't just say, well, I grew up here, I'm going to save up a few bucks and move to this perfect place, because before we do that, we have to explore and know what kind of place we want to live. And I, for one, don't really know where I want to live. I mean, I love where I live. I'm happy here. It's Portland, great place to live, good people, more or less. So I see, I guess, kind of getting off track, but freedom is being, freedom is the right to do what is right. Okay? Freedom is the right to do what is correct and what helps and progresses. So we all have the freedom to do that, and we all have the ability to do that. And why does it seem like for some people they're much happier making others miserable? I try to consider myself a pretty free person. I think I have a lot of rights, and I'm very grateful for the things that I can do. There are things that I fight for that I think are wrong. But I think we all have the freedom to judge one another too, but some people are very judgmental. I get judged by people telling me I'm this and that. Like earlier, it was some old comment I left about Nibiru. It was just saying that Nibiru is not a real thing, it's a symbol, it's an archetype and whatnot. And the guy just called me an idiot, basically, and I said, okay, well, whatever you say. And then he started calling me a Buddhist, saying, you believe in Buddha and you worship a fat bald guy and this and that. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, where did that come from? I assumed that he went to my channel and saw that my intro video has a picture of Siddhartha, which was Buddha before, he became a Buddha. It's just a funny, association that people make. Making connections that aren't there, as I'm obviously not a Buddhist that worships a guy, but I do like Buddhist principles, obviously. I think it's a great thing, but we all have the freedom to judge each other, but we do it based on things that are ridiculous. Like, people will always pick out the one fault about a person, or the one thing they disagree with, and they can just never get over it. Like that Mac guy, he's just nuts, man. He keeps coming around, and I thought he was gone, and he keeps coming around, leaving these. He sent me this comment the other day telling me how stupid I am and this and that, and I asked him, what do you want? You know, what do you want? You know, what's your deal? And he said he wants me to admit that I made a video that was about his video or something. It's something I said to my kid about the McDonald's sign, and it was totally irrelevant, had nothing to do with him, but he seems to be thinking that it does. And I just can't believe that some people have trapped themselves in this, like, this cycle of hatred where they just can't, like, even when you try to be rational. I asked the guy straight up, what do you want from me? And he just didn't reply. And I was like, you know, this is what I've learned to expect from people. You know, they're abusing and sucking energy, or trying to suck energy, trying to be vampires, but some of them just fail utterly. Most of them do, if you don't allow them to, anyway. So that's the ultimate freedom that we have. That's it right there. The freedom to make the choice to not be affected by others' bullshit. It's a pretty good freedom to have. Obviously, if someone's abusing you physically, you know, it's a different story. Verbal abuse from a parent or a loved one is hard, but verbal abuse from someone you don't know, fuck them. They mean nothing. Yeah. Anyway, so that was my little bullshit rant about freedom. I guess here's my freedom, is to make a video where I'm sitting here clipping cannabis, you know, knowing that I'm totally legal to do so, whereas years ago I'd be so scared to even admit that I was smoking pot. Never overlook that freedom. Anyway, peace out. I'm gone.